Yes. I can't remember. Yeah. I went to so many places when I was there. I can't remember what city I was in. Well, it's not city. It's a little town on the mountain, but I don't remember which one. Yeah. I went to Zurich very briefly. In Geneva. Yeah. Well, the big cities I didn't want to spend a lot of time in. I only spent like one day before the airport. The rest of the time I was out in the mountains. I see enough cities here. I didn't need to see them there. Okay. Hey, your meeting minutes on the pile, please. I know we're missing a lot of people. It might be the traffic, which was horrible. Okay, so we're going to start, and anybody who comes in can watch the lecture later. All right. So I'm going to try to cover a couple of chapters today, and we're going to start with what we actually started last time. So a little bit behind, okay, but not much. Right. So we're going to talk about the business story and the plan today. If you have your meeting minutes, please put them up here at the front before I leave today. All right. So your business story. That's going to be the most critical part of your process. All right, this is going to be the way you're going to tell your business story in this class is your pitch video. Okay, so it's basically a narrative of factual or maybe imagined events. Okay, I worked for a company where the story was effectively around imagine a future where anybody can vote from their home without having to get up. It becomes less of a chore for people, that sort of thing. I'm not telling the story as well as the CEO did, but we have the challenge, what our plan is, what our actions are, and what we're going to accomplish, our outcomes. Okay. So we tell the story to attract interest, and we want it to inspire people. And I'm going to talk about the pitch video a little bit more today. Okay, so the first thing we do is we set the stage. Okay, anybody here in drama or did plays or anything like that? Okay, in school. All right, I didn't, but maybe some people did. We're going to set the stage. Okay, what's the current state? Who are the current players? What are the opportunities that we have? Then we're going to have some sort of dramatic conflict. What are the needs, the challenges, the opportunities? And then we're going to rescue and come to the rescue here with a resolution. We have a plan. We're going to overcome those challenges. And then we're going to show what it's like if we were successful. And then we have the business plan, which this is what I drew in the board last time, okay? But I've put it in a slide format. Make it a little bit easier for you, okay? So we have the opportunity, the product, the context, the strategy, the team, the resources you need, your financial returns, and then the harvest, okay? So what does everybody that was a stakeholder get? All right. Now, we have the executive summary. As far as the elements go, we have the executive summary. I talked about that before. That should not be very long, okay? That should be pretty short. That's your summarized view. People are going to read that, and if it's not interesting, You don't do a great job telling your story, no one will ever read beyond the executive summary of your plan. Okay, so that's really an opportunity to tell the story in the executive summary. You're going to talk about your opportunity. So how high of a quality is your opportunity? What's the growth potential? And then you're going to move into your vision. That's when you're coming up with your vision, your mission statement, your objectives, the core concepts. Then you go on to think about your product or service. What's your value proposition? What really do you add that's value there? And what's your business model? Speaking of which, I graded all the concept papers, and for the most part, they were very good. Okay, there were a couple of groups that I had some substantial feedback for, and may have asked you to consider pivoting to a little bit different scenario just based on the realities of what you're proposing. Okay, for that project, nobody's was bad, so I wouldn't say that anybody was had a bad paper. So nobody got any points taken away for that particular assignment. Okay. That being said, the future assignments that you have in this course, like the business plan and stuff like that, are graded on the rubric. So the first one wasn't graded on the rubric. It was just, did you actually do something? Okay, and everybody in the class did. So everybody should see those points out there. All right. If you have questions about the feedback, then I will be available on Thursday. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to have office hours at all today. I have to get out of here as soon as possible after my next class. All right. So if you're not clear about my feedback, come to office hours on Thursday. All right. So the next thing is context. So what industry did you choose? What are the timelines? Is there regulation that might impact what you're doing? Okay. So there were some folks who came up with some things that might be falling into areas that are regulated. Okay. You'll want to think about the regulation and do your own independent research to see what regulation might apply. This is not a law class, so you're not expected to really understand the law, okay? But you need to understand what types of regulations might apply and how, at least at a high level, you're going to overcome that type of regulation, okay? Again, you do not need to understand what the regulations mean. For example, let's say you're going into, you're going to develop a new banking app or something, okay? There is regulation for that, the banking regulations. You don't need to understand what those banking regulations mean, but you need to understand how you're going to address becoming capable of meeting those regulations, okay? And then the strategy. So how are you going to enter into the market? What are you going to do for marketing? How are you going to handle operations? And then also doing a market analysis. And so if you walked in late, you can watch the first bit. We just got started a few minutes ago. Okay. Organization, what's your structure? What's going to be outsourced? What's going to be in-house? What kind of culture are you going to build? What kind of talent are you going to bring in? And how are you going to keep that talent once they come in? Okay. Then you have your entrepreneurial team. So what are the capabilities there? Okay. What type of commitment? You know, I would expect to see that if you're, you know, on the key team, that you're committed to this. So highlight what your commitment is. You know, if you tell me that, yeah, we're all committed, but I plan to continue working 2 full-time jobs and go to school while I'm doing this, I don't see commitment there. Okay. So this is a challenge that you need to think about. The financial plan, what are your assumptions, your cash flow, your profit? I'm still working to get the Epic folks in here to talk to you about that specific aspect so you can actually develop good pro formas, okay? And then the last thing here on the slide is the required resources, so financial, physical, and the human resources that you need, okay? And then the last 3 items that we need in your plan are the uncertainties and risk. If you go through, as you do as part of your market research and you start looking at the SEC filings for companies, you'll see a section on risks. Use that to help you understand what some of those risks might be, okay? Beyond that, there are lots of different risk assessment tools that you can utilize. There's a chapter in the book on this as well, okay? And then one of the slides that I have today has a link to a risk assessment matrix that has a free template online if you want to download it and use that, okay? Then the financial return, what's the return on investment? And then the last thing here is the harvest. How do the entrepreneurs and the investors get their money back that they invested? Okay. How is that going to happen? Is it going to be a self-sustaining business where those profits get distributed periodically to the shareholders? Is it going to be a business where you sell it to a public company or a private company, basically an acquisition? Is it going to be an IPO or something similar to that where you go public and trade out your stock on the public markets? Okay. What are the exit strategy there for you to get the cash back to the investors and the people who started the business? Presumably you. Okay. Now the mistakes. So the first one here, I think I've mentioned many times. This is what I think the biggest mistake is. Okay, from my own experience and from doing things with the Epic folks, is a lack of understanding your customer and what the customer wants. Okay, so if you don't have confirmation from your customer that your idea is valid, that there's people that actually want it, you could really waste a lot of time and money. Okay? That's going to be very important. So you're going to be doing that, and as part of your market research. All right. Another thing is when you do top-down assumptions, we're going to capture 1% of the market share. How are you going to do that? Why would you get 1%? If you can't back that type of statement up, that's bad. So don't go in and just assume I'm going to get 1% of the market or 10% of the market. Okay? Go in and figure out precisely how you're going to capture market share and how much you're actually going to get. If you have a lack of focus, this is what killed the company I used to work for. Okay, we were all over the place. If there was a shiny object in the air, we'd go chasing it. Okay? We had no focus. We were all over the place. Oh, you want this system for the census taking? Well, that's not our business, but we'll go do it for you. Oh, you want this type of system? Yeah, we can go do that for you. As a result, we never did anything well. We just kept taking every little shiny object. Oh, it's a little bit of money here. It's a little bit of money there. We were never successful. We lacked focus. Another thing is if you don't understand the metrics for your business. Okay? So you really need to understand what the metrics that you're going to measure your business on. Just because maybe I've given you an example of, metrics or KPIs, another way of saying that, okay? If I've given you an example, it may not be applicable to your particular business. You really have to think about, as a group, what applies to your business from a metrics perspective. Okay? If you're in the business of providing customer service, then your customer satisfaction score is probably a metric that you care about. Okay? All of you probably should care about profitability, that sort of thing. If you don't fully understand the revenue and profit drivers, okay? So if you just don't have a good understanding of what that is, then that can be a problem as well. If you don't do a good job with the risk assessment, okay, if you really don't think about all the risks. And another thing is, and I mentioned this a few weeks ago, if your team has gaps in what it can do, that can be a problem too. Okay? You've got to identify where your gaps are. Be realistic. None of you know everything. I don't know everything. Okay? I had a student tell me that they thought I knew everything. I don't know everything. I know very little in the grand scheme of things. Okay? So make sure you understand where your gaps are and fill those gaps. You don't want to execute and then realize you didn't have someone who had that experience. Okay, so you want to make sure you have those gaps filled. Competitive analysis. Let's use an example of you decide to create a dating app and you say, my competitor is Tinder and Match, and that's it. I assume Match is still around. I have no idea. All right. And you don't really do a good competitive analysis, and you miss out on other areas that might be growing, maybe small players in certain markets for certain things, okay? Or you only look at the US market, but you're going global. That could be an issue too, okay? So make sure that you think about that. The marketing plan. Anybody here a marketing person? Okay, a couple of people. So you really need to think about how you're going to market. And as much as I would like to believe that we're going to post something on Facebook and everybody's going to see it and it's going to go viral, or I'm going to post something on YouTube, be specific of what you're going to do, because nothing goes viral that easily. Okay? Even if you've got 1 million followers, it's it's got to be something that just wows people in order for it to go viral. Okay. Or it's just so stupid that people click on it and share it with everybody because it's just ridiculous. Okay. The next thing is that, remember that business model matrix we did? You did one in class before I got here last week, and then you also did one here in class. You're going to need to do that and make sure it's complete. Okay, if you're missing any areas in that, that can be a problem. And then if you don't have a good value proposition, and there were at least, I think, one group, maybe two, where I really didn't understand what was the unique value proposition for what you were offering. It sounded like an interesting idea, but I thought it sounded very similar to a lot of other things that are going on. I just didn't understand the value proposition. So you've got to make it clear. If I don't understand what the value proposition is, how is an investor going to understand it? Okay. And then the last thing is the problem and solution are unclear. Give you an example. Let's see here. The problem being there's too much traffic. And the solution is we're going to solve it. Okay. It's not clear. How are you going to solve it? What are you going to do that's unique? Why is traffic a problem? Is it a problem everywhere? You've got to be very precise in these areas. Okay. Now the elements, what I did here was I provided the chapters and the pages for each one of these elements to help you out, okay, for the business plan. So this is where you can find more information about each of these. Okay. The elevator pitch. Okay, so this one here, you've got about 3 minutes. Okay, you could go less than that if you wanted to. All right. You're going to give your brief case to your business. It's a short version of your business story. So the business story that you kind of come up with for your executive summary, this is the short version. Think of it like an elevator pitch. If you were to get in an elevator and ride to the top of the World Trade Center, okay? Okay, that's a bad example because that elevator goes very fast. Okay? Almost makes you sick. Let's say you get in another tall building and you ride to the top. What would you say if there was an investor in the elevator? Okay? If Elon Musk was in there and he had a wad full of cash and he was willing to give it to anybody in the elevator with a great idea, what would you say and how would you say it? Okay, so you should really have that pitch well rehearsed when you get in there. Okay, but no more than 3 minutes. All right, but the goal is to just get a follow-up meeting and tell more. So this is supposed to be high level, limit details, but it should understand. You should demonstrate you understand your business. Okay, and that you can communicate effectively. Right. If you ramble on, go off in tangents, those sorts of things, you're not going to get a follow-up meeting. Okay? You want to be able to get that follow-up meeting where you can go into more details. Now, to help you, this is what you should have in your elevator pitch, okay, for your video. An introduction. What's the opportunity? What are the benefits? It helps to start with a captivating question. Did you know that 78% of statistics are made up on the spot? Okay, that sort of thing. Something that's compelling there, okay? Convey your vision, and then just a couple of things for a memorable pitch. Use layperson's terms, okay? Don't use technical jargon. I can guarantee you that's never successful. So if you're building a new semiconductor that conducts electricity at 20 times the speed of light, okay? And it's galvanized, and by the way, I'm just making up random words here to say this, okay, to illustrate. Put it in layperson terms, okay? We've developed a faster way to do X with less money, okay? Make it simple, use imagery and examples. Okay, so come up with ways to make it examples. Use analogies. I don't have this in the slide, but using analogies can be very helpful. I guess my favorite story about my career was one time I was asked to put together a slide deck for Larry Ellison. He's the founder of Oracle. Okay, and I was panicking about it because I didn't know what I should put in the slide deck. And my boss just said, tell some stories. And make it easy to understand, because even though he's, apparently a smart guy, he may not know the language that I would be talking. So I need to put it in layman's terms. So I used the example of the problem we're trying to solve of we're trying to build an airplane in flight, which I actually took from the EDS Super Bowl commercial from like 2000. Okay, they were building an airplane while it was in flight. And so I used that imagery to describe that. And I guess it was effective enough because he used my slide in presentations in his meetings later on. Now, of course, he didn't credit me or anything like that, but someone who was in the meeting told me later on that said, gosh, he was using your slide. So you want something that an executive is going to take and remember, okay, and stick with them. All right. I guess if you know who Larry Ellison is, he owns an island in Hawaii and stuff. I've never actually met him, but he almost hit me with his car. So if he had actually hit me, I wouldn't be here today. All right. Another thing is generate interest. So you want to make sure you fill in gaps. Okay. And then you want to make sure you get an emotional response out of the person and show passion. So I think one of the really key attributes of the CEO I used to work for was she was very charismatic. Okay? She could tell a story, and by the end, people believed it. People were interested. They wanted to hear more. She had this gift. Okay? There were many times we would go out on the road to go meet with customers. She would show that passion, even if they were never going to do anything with us. Okay? They would want us to come back and talk to more investors or more customers. Okay? It's because she demonstrated a passion for what she has. If you come up on the pitch video and you're like, yeah, we've got this really great idea and it's pretty cool and I'm pretty excited about it. Okay, there's no passion there. But if I instead did something like this, we got this really great idea and it's going to change the world. Okay, that sort of thing is going to show passion. Okay? I'm not a good actor. All right, so let's go on to the next unit, which was 7. Oops, close that. Which is the unit on risk. All right, so risk assessments. First of all, there's 2 blog posts you should read. Okay, they talk about risk. Frankly, the way they talk about risk is a lot easier to understand than the way that the book talks about it. Okay, so if you're struggling with how the book talks about risk, just go ahead and look at those 2 blog posts and you probably have a better understanding of it. Okay. The other thing is Smartsheet has free templates at the link that I have in the slide. You do not have to sign up for an account for Smartsheet for this because Smartsheet is not free. They have Excel, Word, and PDF templates for various ways of calculating risk. Okay. I don't have any specific one of those templates you should use. Okay. You can use any of them or none of them. You can go find your own risk template. The key thing there is that they not only have the templates, but they also explain how they work. Okay. And then if you want to use Smartsheet, you can, but it's not free. So you can do like a free trial, but I don't think you need it. They're giving you basically a file you can open in Word or Excel or PDF. Okay. Now, risk is the possibility of loss. I have some other materials. I'll have to dig up and see if I can find them. And if so, I'll post them on risk. Okay. But risk is the possibility of loss. Uncertainty is the outcome is unknown. And if we have time later, we might do an in-class activity on risk tolerance. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a note for that. I just want to have enough time for everything today. All right. Now, the levels of uncertainty, you should look at page 141 in the book. I'm not going to project this, but on 141, you don't have to have your book if you're having class, but there's a table of uncertainties, okay? And so some of the examples were a level of risk of very low, purchasing a treasury bill, okay? They're considered a very low risk investment. Another layer up from that is low, okay? And it's a limited set of possible outcomes. You set up a push cart and you sell sports items at the Olympics, okay? A wide range of possible future outcomes, uncertainty level. The level of risk is medium. You launch an improved product in a new market. And the last one is limitless range of possible outcomes as far as uncertainty. That's a high level of risk. You establish a firm to try to design and sell a revolutionary power source based on a fuel cell breakthrough, okay? Take a look at that table. I think that would be helpful. So different types of uncertainty that we face. So we've got market uncertainty, okay? Product We don't know if people will actually pay for the product. When the iPhone came out, there was probably a lot of uncertainty. Is someone actually going to pay this much money for a phone? Okay. Processes, are our processes good? Okay. Is there uncertainty around our processes? Regulation. Okay. A lot of businesses face this. They may go develop, and the drug and pharmaceutical industry is actually a good example of this. You can go out and you can go develop a product, but in the end, if the FDA doesn't approve it, you can't sell it here. So you could go and invest millions of dollars on a product, test it, have relatively good results, and then have the FDA say, nope, we don't like your results, you can't sell it, and now you've spent all that time and money on something that's never going to get approved here. Okay. So then you have to have a contingency plan of what you're going to do. So maybe you end up selling it overseas where there's different regulation, or maybe you go try to stack the deck politically and have your buddy go lobby the government to get the FDA to change their mind. Okay, or maybe you go and develop some other product. The legal side, there are a lot of legal issues. In addition to the day-to-day types of legal issues that you face as a business, there might be legal uncertainties around, it could be like product liability. If something happens after we launch this product, what kind of liability might we have? That's an uncertainty. Okay. We develop a new way to plug in a charger into the wall and it falls apart and electrocutes our customers. Okay. Something we need to think about. There could be, we launch something and then we get a lawsuit because of intellectual property theft or something like that, okay? We could have employees who steal things. We could have trade secret legal issues with our employees. A lot of different things. Contract issues. We contract with, I don't know, Uber to do something. Uber violates the contract, and now we've got a legal issue there. These are all uncertainties we need to think about, okay? Another one could be organization. Maybe we've never worked together before. There's a lot of uncertainty there. Could be that, you decide that you're the CEO, everybody agrees with you because, you're charismatic and everybody believes that you should be the CEO. And it turns out you have no leadership experience and that was a bad thing, okay? One of the things that we try to do in business is get everybody in the right seat on the bus, okay? And this doesn't always happen the first time. So this is a lot of conversations around people's capabilities and whatnot. The financial side, maybe you aren't going to make any money. Maybe you plan on an investor and the investor falls through. This has happened so many times, okay? Where I've worked for companies where in the 11th hour, we were about bankrupt as a company, okay? And then suddenly, using one example, SoftBank. Have you heard of SoftBank before? They were one of the bigger investors than we were, okay? And a huge failure. But SoftBank came in at the last minute and said, yes, we'll give you some money to keep your company afloat. And literally the day before the company would have closed. But you have to lay off 70% of your staff to get the money. Okay. That's an uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen financially, so that's something we need to consider. And then from a management perspective, what if we have a key manager in the organization who leaves? It happens all the time in businesses. Apple entices someone who's an executive at some startup to go work for them instead. They leave. Leaves a vacuum. It's a huge risk, especially when you're a young organization. All right. So these are all types of uncertainty. Now, calculating risk, there's a lot of formulas in the book that you should look at, okay, on pages 142 and 145. But at its core, it just reflects uncertainty and your potential loss. Okay, so there's a simple formula I have here of risk equals uncertainty times the potential loss. The potential loss is your investment and the opportunity cost. And I'll give you an example, okay? Let's say that I'm currently working for a company or have an opportunity to go work for a company and they're going to pay me, say, $200,000, to be their CEO, okay? That's my opportunity cost. Okay? I'm going to be giving that up. Now, let's say I invest. In order to found a business, I have to invest something, okay? Let's just assume I invest $100,000, okay? Then my potential loss is $300,000, okay? And this could be just, this could be annually, or this could be over a period of time. Okay? Now, uncertainty is what we multiply by this number. And in the book, they talk about how to come up with that. So But we then determine whether or not the risk is basically what level the risk is based on uncertainty times the opportunity cost. Okay. Now, if I have an opportunity cost from my, say, a salary perspective of, my earning potential is $30,000 and I have to invest $100,000, okay, then that's only $130,000. It's lower. So it's going to change this calculation. If I, $30,000 and the investment opportunity, I only have to invest, $3,000, it's only this much money. The risk, this is very high. So basically the risk level goes like that. Okay. I stand to lose a lot more if I'm up here, investing a lot of money and have a high earning potential. Okay. And then I've got the risk assessments you should definitely look at as well. Okay. Now, scalability, how large can a firm grow to provide that additional service? Okay. Some firms can scale very well. Some cannot. So on the first day of class, I talked about a couple of different types of entrepreneurship opportunities, right? So let's say a dry cleaner, that is not going to scale. Okay. How big can you realistically build a dry cleaner and still get enough customers to sustain the business? Okay. They're in every neighborhood, it seems like, but each one's independently owned. Okay. This is not a scalable business, but a software business or actually another one that's not a good scalable business in general is consulting. Consulting doesn't scale well, okay, because it's typically based, I meant to write doesn't scale. Okay. It's based on individuals. Give you an example of my own. Okay. I'm one person. There's only a certain number of hours a day that I can bill to a client. So there's a peak of how much I can earn consulting unless I hire other people to do consulting, but then I'm limited by them. So it's scalable, not very scalable. Okay. I have to scale with people. Whereas something with software or say some other type of technology, these are very scalable. Once I build it out, I can add incremental customers to it pretty easily, okay, as the organization grows. So say a Google has been able to scale, Facebook's been able to scale. Okay? They were once little companies. Capacity. So as an organization, I have a certain amount of capacity to do something. Okay? So Google has a large capacity. Imagine this square is Google. They have a large capacity. But think of a startup. I don't know. Here's one that I know of in the name of. Okay, it's called Recurly. They do recurring billing. They have this much capacity in comparison. Okay. They just don't have the resources that Google has. Okay. Now, Yahoo used to be at Google size. Yahoo used to be here. They had a large capacity. Mismanagement kept carving this up. Okay. And now they're probably this much capacity. I don't even think they're called Yahoo anymore, but okay. The next thing is working capital. So this is your current assets minus your current liabilities. It could be, so basically your accounts receivable, okay, minus your liabilities. It could be your debt, your short and long-term debt. So you can get working capital from debt, your receivables, also from the sale of fixed assets or selling stock, okay, equity in your company. All ways to get working capital to fund your business. A lot of companies, when they're smaller, will use short-term debt, like credit cards or assuming they can get a credit card, or Amex and some other banks have business lines of credit that are for paying payroll until your customers pay you, okay? So that's a form of working capital. It's not going to be a level of capital that you can use for large investments. You're going to need probably long-term debt or significant equity sale in order to fund long-term capital projects. You just wouldn't have enough if you just did your receivables or short-term debt. Okay. Has anybody heard of network effects? So this is a company I used to work for, and they actually were able to take advantage of the network effect pretty well. So it's this idea that if you build it, more people will come. which will bring more businesses, which will bring more consumers, which will bring more businesses, which will bring more consumers, okay? And some good examples up here are like Twitter, okay? When Twitter was young, there wasn't a whole lot of value to it. Okay? But as more and more people use the platform, there was more value. Let me give you the example from the company I work for. We were in the space of race registrations. Anybody run marathons or triathlons or anything like that in here? Okay. I don't either, so don't feel bad. But basically, they started providing software for races. And that meant that people registered for races. So the more races they held, the more people would register, which meant the more people would be visiting their platform. And then the more that people that visited their platform meant the more race organizers wanted to be on their platform. And so it just kept growing and growing and growing with that network effect. Okay. This is something that you can take advantage of as you're growing your business, depending on what you're doing. So some of you said, oh, we're going to advertise on social media. Okay. You're really looking to find network effect for your platform. So if you're trying to deliver food or something, you're probably trying to find a network effect. Okay. But banks are another example. Okay. If you go to a small bank, you're going to probably get great service at a small bank, but limited services available to small bank. So as banks acquired other banks, they grew in size, and that's a selling factor for some people that, hey, I can go to a bank anywhere in the country. Okay. That's sort of how Bank of America grew. Okay. Now, airlines are the same thing. Okay. They grow, they service more cities, you're more likely to keep flying on them. Okay. So it's kind of a network effect as well for that. And then hotels as well. Okay. I generally try to stay at IHG or Hilton hotels because I get points. And they've got a variety of different budget ranges. So they've kind of built a network that makes it where people like me want to go stay in their hotels. I don't want to stay at Marriott usually because I don't have a lot of points with them. I don't have enough opportunity to stay at their hotels. Okay. So I try to stay at places where I can get the points because then I earn perks and I earn, free stays and stuff. Honestly, the perks are the best thing of something like that. Okay. So really, if your business is really built on volume, like a consumer-oriented business, you should really be looking at how can you generate network effects. Okay. All right. Risk versus return. Make sure to review the book. There is on page 157, there is I believe it's a table if I'm not mistaken. No, it's actually a graph, okay, with risk and return. Okay, so that would be good to look at. All right, that's it for chapter 7. That was a pretty quick chapter. And now, chapter 8. We will be caught up. Okay, so this is on creativity and product development. We are not going to go in depth into product development in this course. If you're interested in that, do 171, the systems analysis and design. Okay, either Professor Rich or I will do it, and we do the same thing in the class. Who all took the class? I recognize a couple people. Yeah, good class or bad class? Honestly, I'll cover my ears. Resources required. Okay. You need to, in order to do product development, you need to have the domain knowledge in the area that you intend to build. Okay. You need to be able to envision solutions. Okay. One of the things I tell people when they come to me, I have a problem in my career, okay, like employees. Don't come to me with a problem, come to me with a solution. Okay. Anybody can come to me with a problem. Your job is to come to me with the solution to actually solve the problem. And we may not go with that solution. We may decide that's not the best solution, but at least come to me with a solution before you come to me with a problem, right? Inventive thinking. So think of new ways of doing things. Motivation is going to be key. You have to be motivated to build something. Okay? If you're not motivated, you're good. Willingness to adapt. And you also need a willingness to embrace creativity and mitigate risks. Okay, you're not going to do the best thing the first time you try to do something. Creativity. So you want to use your imagination to develop the new ideas. Okay. And then on page 165 here, I won't try to show this on the thing. I'll kind of draw it on the board here. All right, so this is where a flow chart comes in handy, okay? So we're gonna start here, all right? We're gonna describe the problem. So what's the problem? Then the next thing we're gonna do is we're going to study the problem. Oops. There's not enough parking on campus. That's the problem. We're gonna spend a lot of time studying it. Why is there not enough parking on campus? What type of options might be available on the campus? Really looking at the problem, okay? Why, we've got construction that could be the reason, right? Then we're gonna do brainstorming, okay? And this is one of the things that I like to do in my classes is do a brainstorming activity, okay? So when we're done here with these slides, we're going to do two activities. Number one, we're going to do the risk activity. I'm going to ask some people to think about their risk levels, okay? We're also going to do some brainstorming of some ideas and be creative, okay? This really allows us to, in a group setting, get as many ideas down without rating or ranking the ideas. Let's just get every idea, no matter how ridiculously stupid it may sound. We don't criticize, we just get all the ideas on the table. Then we can go back and think about them some more and come up with what we want to do. Then we move to the ideas and inventive thinking. So really thinking through these ideas. Then this is where we move into the evaluation of the ideas. Okay, evaluate and test. Oh, your idea is we have this giant train that everybody drives onto on the 215, and then it comes up to campus here and it parks, and then when we're done at the end of the class, we go drive it off. Okay, a really ridiculous idea. Okay, but when I pose it, we don't criticize it, we just write it down. We go back and we say, well, the reason that's not feasible is because of this, but could we do something similar to that? There's a different way to approach that problem. Incidentally enough, in other countries, there are trains that you drive on. They drive you through like a tunnel and you get to the other side. I think that would be a great solution for traffic between here and Orange County. Build some tunnels with trains that you just drive on, it drives there, and they just operate continuously in a loop, okay? Because most of the time those accidents that happen on the 91 are because people are stupid and not paying attention, okay? All right, so evaluate and test the ideas. And then we build a prototype, okay? And then once we've built a prototype, we show it to the customer. So we get customer input. All right, and then we go back to the beginning here and we iterate through this again until we really understand what we're trying to solve, okay? All right, make another note, the brainstorm activity. All right, so brainstorming here. Now in this class, it's gonna be kind of hard because technically we should have a relatively small group to do brainstorming, okay? Actually, you know what we'll do? I had an idea. We'll have a few people come up here to the board and represent the broader audience here. I think for brainstorming might be easier. All right. You need to focus on something specific. Okay. So I'll give you a specific problem to think about. Okay? And I want to use the OC traffic problem. Okay. That's going to be what I'll come up with here for us. All right. And then We want to be creative. Okay, we don't want to evaluate until the very end. In that cycle there. Okay, all right. We want to make sure that everyone participates. It's gonna be hard in this class because there's so many of us. Well, there's so many of you. There's one of me, but we'll pick some volunteers to come up and help us with this. Okay, and then we also want to, in general, we want to be able to go back to these ideas and really consider them. So the way I typically break this up, and I'll give you guys to do however you want for your project, but typically we will do these three in a first session, okay, together. Then we will go back and we'll do this offline. We won't do this in a formal meeting. We'll just kind of go through these. Then we'll come back here to the evaluation. This will be a second session. And then we'll have someone do this prototype. Okay? Someone does this. And then we'll do a session with the customer. And then we'll repeat as needed. Okay. Now, if you're doing something where there's a lot of customer input needed, you might bring a customer in early on in the brainstorming, depending on your particular business. Okay? And if you had a customer available. I've actually done customers in the brainstorming portion for certain specific things where I don't have enough knowledge of the problem. Okay? So I bring a customer in and we brainstorm with the customer present. Other times I brainstorm with my architects. Okay. Okay, and then product design and development was on 169 and through 174. So this on 169 there's a table, and what it's really talking about is how you do how you act in more of a traditional practice of a company versus a company that's more creative focused. Okay, so a conventional company, they're going to hire people who are fast learners of the politics, okay, and how the organization operates. A creative company is going to be focused on people who don't really give a crap about the politics. Okay, be more focused on just coming up with ideas. Right? In a conventional company, you hire for what I like to call culture. Okay, you hire for people who are organizationally going to fit. When you're in a creative culture at an organization, you hire for people who you may not dislike, may make you uncomfortable, but that is a value for those people. That's the value they add to your organization. They're different than you. Okay. In a conventional organization, you hire people you need. Okay? And in a creative organization, you hire people you don't need. Okay? And so I've talked to companies where they're looking to hire people who are different than them. In fact, if you're too similar, you don't make it very far in the process because they want creative thinkers, right? In a conventional company, you use job interviews pretty extensively. But at a creative company, you get ideas from interviewing people, and it's not even a traditional interview. I'll give you an example. So I've actually I've had a couple of really cool opportunities, and I've gone through the process. One company, it was not an interview at all. I mean, the guy and I just had a conversation. He wrote down a lot of ideas. Okay. Another company started off by having me ask questions. I got to ask the questions. We spent most of the time me asking questions. They were doing a lot of writing. What they were writing down were all the things I talked about. Okay. And they were looking for more of a creative type person, not someone who fits and checks all the boxes. On the flip side, I've interviewed a lot of places where they're literally going through and he said that, he said that, he didn't say that. That's how a traditional organization works. You're going to find people who conform to those boxes, which is not going to help you if you need creativity in your organization. Okay. Another thing is organizational hierarchy. Okay? Some companies, you come in, you're expected to obey your boss. They are your boss. Okay? Other organizations, you come in, you're part of the team. Yeah, you have a manager, but you're expected to, I don't want to say fight. The book uses the word fight, but it's really, you're supposed to challenge the status quo, challenge your manager, challenge your team. Okay. I don't know about you, I would rather work for the latter, the creative organization, okay? Uh, Another example, and I mentioned this earlier in the course about failure. Some companies penalize failure and reward success, most companies. But when you reward success and failure, you're going to improve your organization far greater than if you penalize failure, because you'll never learn as an organization if you don't fail. Okay? Now, the creative companies penalize when you're idle. Give you an example. This guy worked for me very briefly. I hired him because I knew him from high school. Okay? Poor hiring decision, but we were desperate at the company I worked for to find someone who was willing to do the work, and it was not fun work. Okay? And this person was unemployed and wanted to do the work. So I said, okay, fine. This person needed to be told exactly what to do and when to do it. That was their personality. And when they had nothing to do, they just sat there and stared at their desk. And this person worked a lot remotely at another site with our client. And the client came in and was pissed one day because this guy was just sitting there staring at his desk like this for an hour doing nothing. I had to penalize the idleness. Okay? He didn't work for us much longer after that. All right. Let's see here. Another thing is companies that are risk averse and penalize failure, they will plan for something that will be successful, and they will kind of say it's going to be successful. This is going to be the most successful product ever. Okay? Whereas a more creative firm is going to be planning for the failure. Okay? You want to plan for the failure and hope for success. All right. So there's a little bit different there. And then this is one I've seen a lot with some larger organizations. So if someone else has the exact same problem, larger organizations tend to ignore that other people have had the problem and assume that they have some unique, special snowflake environment where it's different. Okay. So even though, let's say, Google solved the problem, company A is going to ignore that and spend the resources to go investigate and solve the problem, even though Google already solved it, because it has to be a unique problem. It must be only specific to them. Okay? Whereas a more creative company is actually going to do the opposite of that. Okay. And then I think that's good for that section. All right. So then let's go into the product design process a little bit. These do not like this book. Does yours fall apart? Anybody have the paper one? It's constantly falling apart on me. Paper's like really fragile. Okay, so let's use this section here. Okay, so with the development process, okay, we have research and development. Then we go into, for that process, we have product design. Okay? We go in and we design it. We build prototypes. And if you were in 171, we did some prototyping in that class with various tools. Okay. Then you test. And then, is it good, basically? Okay. And if the answer is yes, then we finalize the design. And if the answer is no, we go back to here. Okay. So let's use an example of Apple. Apple came out with a wireless charger, which they exist, talked about it, hyped it. They were going to launch it, and then something must have gone awry, okay, because they didn't launch it. So my suspicion is that they realized that it was not a good, not a good design. There was something wrong with it, and they went back to the drawing board. Now, whether they ever see the light of day with it, I have no idea. I think we've all moved on from the wireless charging. All right? Maybe we haven't. I got kind of a weird look. I know I have. I have one in my car, and it's never worked. So it makes a great spot to just put a, candy bar or something. That's pretty much it. I think that's it for here. Okay, so then the prototype. Okay. So prototypes, and I hope that those of you who were in 171 and are in groups will actually share maybe what you did in 171. Okay. What you should do, and let me ask this question. How many of you are planning to do some sort of app or web page as your product? Okay. So you're going to use a tool of some sort or a piece of paper and sketch it and attach it to your business plan of, this is my really crude drawing of a mobile app, okay? And so then we would mock it up with, the things on it. That would be what our prototype might look like on our mobile app, okay? And this might be I don't know, it's supposed to be a chicken, okay? Maybe we've got a mobile app that serves food. Okay? We would do something along those lines. It doesn't have to be fancy, although if you did take 171 and your group wants to do beyond a typical wireframe and go to a more of a prototype, okay, you're welcome to do that. Okay? How many of you are doing a physical product? Okay, if you're doing a physical product, it's a little tougher normally. So what you're going to do is just sketch out what that physical product would look like. So if it's a car, do your best job to draw. I know you're not in art school or anything, okay? Do your best job to sketch something out. I'm not going to grade on what that looks like, by the way, okay? Although if you do like a really nice looking prototype or something, then there might be some extra credit points. But I'm not going to grade down because you can't draw, all right? But it is a content of the business plan. And at least try to do something. Okay? Don't spend a lot of time on it, but try to do something just so that I can see what you're thinking about. Okay. If you got a flying car, sketch it out what you think the flying car might look like. Okay. Is that clear? So that's basically the prototyping. You'll build something. In the real world, this could be you build something using the design software and virtual reality. So you build something that someone can put on a headset and then experience what it looks like. It could be mold something out of clay if it's a physical product. It could be something that you build out of paper machine for, in the real world. It could be any of these things. It could be something you 3D print. Okay? That's actually another option too. Okay? If you really want to go, the science library has 3D printers. You can print things as students. So if you come up with some sort of design, you could always 3D print it. That would be extra credit, show me that but I wouldn't invest a lot of time in it, okay? All right. So that's it for our slides. We caught up. We have a little bit of time, okay? So let me clear the board. Who wants to volunteer for the brainstorming session? Nobody? Okay, then here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna give you and you guys have to verbally tell me now, okay? You don't have to come up to the front, I'll write it down. But for the risk, think about you as a person, okay? How much risk are you willing to take and accept? Would you consider yourself risk averse, or are you a risk taker? Any volunteers? If I gave you an opportunity to go work for my startup, and I'm not going to be able to pay you very much, I'll pay you $30,000 a year, okay? But I'm going to give you 1 million shares of stock that are worthless right now, but they might be worth something someday. Or he's going to offer you a position at Google for $100,000 a year with some stock. But the stock's never going to be at a level of what, maybe you could potentially get with 1 million shares. You're going to get maybe 10 shares out of Google. So I'm the next unicorn. I've got the greatest company. Yeah, I've got the greatest company. I got this idea no one's thought of before, okay? I'm going to do food delivery. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody able to make that decision right now? So you're kind of in the middle. Yeah. You go to startup. Why? Potential. Yeah. And worst case, you learn a lot, and you go to the next startup, or you go to Google later. Yeah. There's a lot of people do. They'll go to a startup, they'll learn a lot, and then Google will hire them, or Facebook or whoever. Yeah. Anybody else? All right. So brainstorming. We've got this problem of traffic between here and Orange County. How many of you have to go to Orange County on occasion? Okay, I absolutely hate it. You live there? It sucks, right? I'll go south or I'll go across the Ortega, and the Ortega is not the best road to be on. There's no cell coverage. But there's got to be a better way to solve the traffic problem. If we added more lanes to the 91, it really didn't help things. In fact, it made the 15 worse. Okay? They added all those lanes, and yeah, the 91 got a little better, but the 15 got worse. Okay? So now we're adding more lanes to the freeways. It doesn't solve the problem ever. So let's think about some creative ideas. How could we solve the traffic problem between here in Orange County or here in LA? Any ideas? Yes. Tunnel with a train, yeah. Is that a passenger vehicle tunnel is the same problem. You're just going to have to build more and more lanes, right? So tunnel with the train. That's one option. Any other ideas? Yes. So variable tolls. Anybody else? I know it's early. Okay. Yes. Mhm. Okay. So like business uh, businesses incentivize commuters to adjust schedules. Incentivize commuters to adjust schedules. I'll throw one out there. Okay. Telecommuting. If we could do more of that, then fewer people would be on the roads. If maybe it was, if you're these companies, it's Monday, Wednesday that you go to, everybody goes to the office, and Tuesday and Thursday everybody stays home. If companies kind of agree to do that sort of thing, maybe that would work. And then maybe it's alternate Fridays or something. Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. Other ideas? Yes. Better mass transit. Yeah. What about Elon Musk's famous Hyperloop? Maybe it'd work. I've actually thought it'd be cool to have like a test Hyperloop on the campus here to get you from place to place. You know, I can get from here to the other side campus in 2 seconds flat, right? Any other ideas? Nothing? I'd actually love to see the physics department do research into teleportation or something. That would be outside the realm. But hey, I'm in a brainstorming session. It's a valid thing, okay? Whether it's realistic or not, we can come to that later. Flying cars. What about drones that can carry you around the campus, basically? Flying drones. I'll just say drones in general. Okay. See you guys later. My drone's waiting outside. Yes. Okay. So like tax incentives for employers to flex schedules. Okay. In the back. Mm-hmm. Yep. Where to put? So increase flexibility, work from home. Okay. Yes. What's that? Yeah, lane discipline. Oh my gosh. This morning on the 215, in the fast lane, someone's doing 50 from another state, doing 50, driving that lane. People are beeping and going around them. Okay. It's holding up traffic. It happens all the time. People, I don't know what it is about out of state people and their cars. They drive in the fast lane like it's another lane. It's supposed to be actually a passing lane. That's what it's supposed to be for. But people just stay in that lane. Okay. So if any of you are doing that, shame, shame, shame. Yes. The big trucks. Actually, that's actually a great one. The trucks. I have heard this in other states where they want to have dedicated truck lines or lanes. I mean, yeah, or hours. Yeah. Mhm. Another thing could be along those same lines, construction. Why are they doing construction during rush hour? Right? So ban construction during rush hour. Anything else? Some of these fall into like policy, which is something that's often not thought about in this realm. People think about bill, 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 but they don't think about what about policy, changing policies. Any other ideas? All right, so we've got a lot of ideas here now. So what we would do then is we would kind of parse these and maybe flesh some of them out more, determine that teleportation, as much as we'd like that to be realistic, the reality is scientists can only do that with atoms at this point, like individual atoms, okay? And they can move it 50 feet in a lab, okay? So realistically, this is not going to happen anytime soon. In 50 years, you can all come back, and when you're professors, you can ask your students, and maybe teleportation will be realistic, okay? Now, flying cars. Although, yes, yeah. Mhm. Oh, so like a lane to put crashes on or something? Yeah. So like a special emergency lane. I'm going to add one more, and that's alternate routes. Um, this happened to me when I was actually teaching here, I think a year ago. Does anybody remember when the person was jumping off the freeway bridge down on 215 down by Van Buren? They closed the freeway. There is, at that point at Van Buren, there is no other road to get south from here until you get to just before Paris, and then there's another road that goes parallel to the freeway. They built the freeway off the old road before the freeway came in, and they just rebuilt it. So I ended up two tracking in my car. Everybody was two tracking. I'm not kidding. Somehow GPS took everybody through government property, and it started off as a residential street, and then it became a dirt road, and then it became a two track with big potholes. And there were trucks and cars in both directions, and everybody was being routed that way. There was no other option. I mean, I guess the alternative is you go all the way up to the mountain and go around Hemet and around that way, or you go all the way over to Corona and you come down the 15. That was a 4.5 hour commute to go from here to just south of Paris. Okay. So that sort of thing, alternate routes. You had a question, you had one. Sorry. Okay, yeah, so yeah, so this is actually a good one. So I compiled a list a while ago of remote friendly companies about a year ago, and it's growing. And what I'm seeing, and from talking to employers in that area that used to have an office, WordPress has an office or had an office. I don't know if they still have it or not, but the company makes WordPress had an office in San Francisco. Nobody ever went to it. Basecamp, the company makes Basecamp. They're in Chicago. They had an office. I think they still have it for people to go to if they want to. Nobody ever goes. You know, they got this big office and maybe three people show up. They've 100% adopted remote work possibilities. Okay, um, even some larger companies have where they have the resources to measure this sort of thing. Uh, use Oracle as an example, although they've kind of shifted away. You know, that's why I don't work there anymore. Is because I was remote and they don't do that anymore. But they were doing it and they were measuring it. Okay. And they were seeing that when people were working remotely, the traffic levels overall decreased in their particular area of their headquarters. So traffic would be really crazy bad. And then when they started letting people work from home, the streets around the office were not as busy. So it was a little easier for people in the area to get around. Okay. So yeah, this is definitely a good one. All right. So going back to this, flying cars, I would say that probably we're a little ways off from that. Okay, there's actually some air traffic infrastructure that needs to be built first. So realistically, if we're thinking what can we do, say in the next 2 years, this is probably not an option. Okay, this one too probably not an option. Okay, we could probably do the telecommuting would be an easy one to do. Okay? Variable tools, incentives for business. These are all policy based, right? Improving the way carpools are done. Tax incentives could be done, lane disciplines. This one could be a policy decision. So all those ones with the dot could be done just with policy. No construction, no funding, just policy changes, okay? And then we can look at some of these other ones as more of a longer term solution, okay? So then you would then prioritize what's important and what you actually realistically can do, and then you go and figure out within your team what you're going to do. So everybody, by the way, figured out. I know that you all did your concept papers, but is everybody reasonably certain of what you're planning to do for this class, for your project? Is anybody not certain? If you're not certain, you should come see me on Thursday, your group, okay? I will not be here Friday, but Thursday you can come see me, all right? With that, we've got 10 minutes left. I'm going to go ahead and dismiss, okay? Make sure you're turning your papers.